approximately half of the warrant to Mr. Bailey before he left my office. I followed behind Mr. Bailey, telling, "Stop, Mr. Bailey, you are under arrest." I told him this at least twice from the time he left my office to when he reached the front of the town hall. Mr. Bailey was walking away very fast. When we reached the front of the town hall, I told Tammy Wilson, the town clerk, to call for a deputy. Mr. Bailey almost paused as he was going out the door and looked at me briefly. Mr. Bailey then quickly continued out through the door and went to the driver's door of a beige Chevy truck. I followed Mr. Bailey, still telling him that he was under arrest. Mr. Bailey stood just past the driver's door at the extended cab as I came up to him. I stood next to the door to prevent Mr. Bailey from opening the door. Mr. Bailey doubled his fists, clenched his teeth, and said, "Don't you put your hands on me." Again, I told Mr. Bailey that he was under arrest and intended to handcuff his left wrist. When I did, Mr. Bailey pushed me away with both hands, then opened the door and got into his truck. I was able to prevent him from shutting the door on me and then stood in the open doorway. I again tried to get a cuff on Mr. Bailey's left wrist. Mr. Bailey began pushing me away by my chest with his left arm and hand, and he began trying to get his keys into the ignition with his right hand. I fought with his hands, trying to keep him from getting his keys into the ignition, but was unable to stop him. When Mr. Bailey started the ignition, my upper body was inside the truck. At this point, Mr. Bailey grabbed the gear shift, trying to put the truck in gear. I was holding on, pulling up on the gear shift to keep him from putting the truck in reverse. Mr. Bailey was able to put the truck in reverse, and when he did, I heard the engine rev. The truck backed up fast, hitting the whole left side of my body with the door jamb, apex. I hit my head on the door jamb and pinned my into the apex of Mr. Bailey's truck. Mr. Bailey was pushing me into the door jamb of the truck while backing up, and I couldn't stay on my feet any longer. I was scared to death. I thought that I would die if I fell because Mr. Bailey would run me over. I couldn't climb in the cab with him because there was not enough room. I had nowhere to go. I was afraid for my life. I was able to twist my torso around enough to draw my gun. I drew my gun and had to bring my arm, right, over the top of Mr. Bailey's arm, left, while he was still pushing me into the door jamb. I fired 2 rounds into his chest. Mr. Bailey pulled his left arm away from me, drawing in towards his chest. The truck was still moving, but had slowed down quickly after I shot. I started falling forward towards the rear of the truck. At the same time, Mr. Bailey began rising towards me. I fired a 3rd round at Mr. Bailey. While on the ground, I rolled away from the vehicle. I was looking up at Mr. Bailey and continued to cover the threat with my weapon. I remember hearing the brakes squeaking and the truck rolling backwards a little. I got up, went to the truck, reached in, and put the truck in park.